What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the I Know What You Did Last Summer review series. Today, we're diving into I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, the 1998 sequel to the original. Now, I've got to be honest with you, going into this one, my expectations were pretty low. I really enjoyed the first movie. It's one of those perfect 90s teen slashers that nails the balance between suspense, teen drama, and genuinely creepy horror. It's got great pacing, mystery, and just enough scares to keep you hooked the whole time. But when it comes to this sequel, I'd heard a ton of negative things, especially from horror fans and the community at large. People called it unnecessary, poorly executed, and basically a step down from the original. So yeah, with all that buzz swirling around, I was bracing myself for a total mess. And after watching it, my take is that I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is honestly a pretty mediocre sequel, nothing groundbreaking, and one that's way overhated and misunderstood by a lot of people. It definitely doesn't live up to the original's tight storytelling or suspense, and there are quite a few flaws that drag it down. But at the same time, it's not the disaster that some make it out to be either. There's a solid core here, some fun moments, and enough nostalgia to make it worth your time if you're a fan of these 90s slashers. So it kind of lands somewhere in the middle for me, flawed, but not unforgivable. It's one of those movies where if you're a hardcore fan of the genre or the series, there's enough to enjoy, even if you have to overlook some pretty glaring issues. But before we get too deep into the movie itself, I want to give a quick shout out again to my good friend Buns. I mentioned him in my last review, and we're teaming up again for this one. It's always great to have someone to bounce thoughts off of, especially on movies like this that have a lot going on beneath the surface. Moving on from that, let's jump into a quick synopsis. The film is about Julie and her friends trying to escape their past, but the fisherman returns to stalk them on a remote island. As the body count rises, new characters join the chaos, and the tension builds in the isolated setting. Starting off with the positives, I still really like the fisherman as the villain. That iconic raincoat and hook combo is pure classic slasher material. It's one of those instantly recognizable horror icons that still manages to creep me out every time he shows up on screen. There's something about the slow, relentless way he moves and the eerie silence around him that really captures the spirit of the genre. Plus, the kills in this sequel actually lean a bit more graphic and creative compared to the original. For horror fans who enjoy a bit more gore and inventive death scenes, this is definitely a treat. It feels like the filmmakers were trying to amp up the brutality to compensate for some of the other shortcomings, and honestly, it works in those moments. Following that, let's discuss Jack Black's character, and honestly, he's surprisingly fun to watch. His scenes bring a much-needed dose of levity and charm to the movie, which helps break up the tension in a way that doesn't feel out of place. He's got this easygoing energy that contrasts nicely with the more serious and scary moments, and it adds a unique flavor to the film that I wasn't expecting. It's like a little comic relief without being too goofy. Another character I want to talk about is Julie. Jennifer Love Hewitt is still great in the role. She really sells the fear, vulnerability, and emotional turmoil that her character goes through that helps keep the story grounded despite all the chaos around her. She's one of those actors who can carry a horror movie with just her expressions and reactions, conveying a lot without needing many words. Her performance adds a layer of authenticity and makes you genuinely care about what happens to her, which definitely helps maintain some connection to the audience even when the plot gets a bit messy or confusing. Overall, she's a solid anchor in a film that sometimes struggles to find its footing. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, the island setting, though a bit goofy in concept, actually works better than I expected. The change from a small town backdrop to this isolated island gives the sequel a fresh visual identity. The cinematography really captures that moody, atmospheric vibe perfectly. The beach scenes at night, the fog rolling in, the way the shadows fall across the water. It adds a layer of isolation and dread that visually sets the film apart from a lot of other slashers from that era. It's one of those rare cases where the visuals almost make you forgive some of the story's weaknesses. On the flip side, there's quite a bit wrong with the movie. The biggest issue by far is that it feels like a complete retread of the original film. It's as if they rushed the script just to cash in on the success of the first movie, without really putting in the effort to bring anything fresh, new, or exciting to the table. As a result, the story comes off as predictable and recycled, making it less engaging and ultimately more frustrating to sit through. One of the most frustrating parts for me on this latest rewatch was definitely Ray's subplot. We spend what feels like a solid 20 minutes watching him struggle on this boat, trying to get to Julie, and it drags the movie down big time. It's slow, repetitive, and feels like filler, especially after this earlier scene where the fisherman thinks he's killed Ray but doesn't even check properly. That just felt dumb and completely undercut the tension they were building. Moments like that really hurt the pacing and the stakes. Then there's the whole setup involving the phone call and the fisherman's plan to kill Julie on this island to get his so-called full revenge. Frankly, that premise feels pretty ridiculous and doesn't really hold much water when you think about it. For starters, it's hard to understand why there are all these random vacationers on the island who don't have any real connection to the original story or the main characters. It feels like the movie just threw in a bunch of extra people purely to pad the body count without any meaningful reason for their presence. This kind of lazy writing ends up hurting the overall logic of the story and weakens the tension that a good slasher needs to build. When your setup doesn't make sense or feels forced, it's tough for the audience to stay invested in the suspense or the characters' fates, and that's a big problem for a horror film that relies on atmosphere and mystery. On top of that, the fisherman's obsession with Julie feels strangely overblown. He's gone through all this effort pulling strings behind the scenes just to isolate her, manipulate her, and kill a bunch of strangers along the way, all for revenge that honestly feels a little thin at this point. It makes him feel less like a threatening slasher villain and more like a guy with a bizarrely elaborate grudge. The more you think about his whole plan, the more it starts to feel goofy instead of scary. And finally, the big reveal of the killers is a major letdown. Unlike the first film, it's not a mystery at all. We pretty much know who it is well before the reveal. And the way they do it, it's bizarre. There's this character who's been playing like one of the good guys the whole time, and then suddenly he's revealed to be Ben Willis's son and appears alongside him in this strange final scene. It feels totally forced and kind of silly rather than clever or satisfying. Honestly, who thought that was a smart twist? It's the kind of reveal that pulls you right out of the movie and makes you question the whole setup. So overall, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is a decent sequel. It's far from the original's level, but it's definitely underrated and overhated by a lot of folks. I'm giving it a 3.25 out of 5, a flawed but fun entry in the late 90s slasher lineup. So, what do you guys think of this movie? Do you love it, think it's just okay, or maybe even dislike it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. I really appreciate your support. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.